Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Colorado Plateau Dark Sky Cooperative's Quarterly Connections. I'd like to start with a question. How can dark night skies improve the quality of our lives? Today, we're going to take a deeper look at the benefits of dark night skies for mental health and all over well-being, including how can we create spaces and manage lighting that keeps people safe and comfortable at night. My name is Lisa Stoner, and I am the coordinator for the Colorado Plateau and Basin and Range Dark Sky Cooperatives. I'd like to thank my co-host, John Barentine, a leader and policy expert in dark sky conservation and one of the original planners for the Quarterly Connection series. John will be helping me today with the Q&A. I'd also like to make a quick thank you to the Institute of Outdoor Rec and Tourism at Utah State University. Thank you for their support in this series. The goal of this Quarterly Connections educational series is to build a community, to foster connections, and broaden a collective understanding of matters related to the dark night sky and its management. We hope with this forum we can all learn and support one another and ultimately be more effective in our unique roles and mission. We have three amazing speakers, each with a unique background and extensive experience looking at ways humans engage with the night. So I will introduce you all our speakers here in just a moment, and I'm really excited to get started. But before we do, I also wanted to acknowledge that the Utah chapter of the American Planning Association has been kind enough to post this, and we welcome all of our planner friends to this session. I will provide a code for continuing education credits at the end of this session, and we are going to get started. Our first presenter today is Dr. Kate McGargle. Kate has her video on now. And so Dr. Kate McGargle is an assistant professor with the Honors College and research instructor with the minor in Dark Sky Studies program at the University of Utah. She's a longtime member of the Colorado Plateau Dark Sky Cooperative and serves on our planning team. Kate will start us off by framing the subject with her talk, Artificial Light at Night, a primer for thinking about health and well-being. So Kate, welcome. Thank you for being with us. And if you'd like to share your screen.
Excellent. Hi, everybody. And thank you, Lisa. Thank you so much to Lisa again and to everybody. And I'm really grateful to be here to talk a little bit about this. My role here is to just kind of frame this topic for you in a very similar way as I do for the students that I work with here at the University of Utah. And so that's kind of the first thing that I'll just quick mention before I dig into the actual topic here, which is that at U of U, which is where I'm speaking to you from right now, I'm in Salt Lake City, we have this minor in dark sky studies where we engage students in all kinds of information about the human relationship with the night. And we also work with communities on topics related to that. And the picture that I'm showing here on the bottom left is actually a cohort of students that I took down to Torrey, Utah, one of the dark sky communities here in Utah a couple of years ago. So I love doing this work. I've been, as Lisa mentioned, involved with the dark sky movement in different capacities over many years, including running around in cornfields as a teenager looking for darkness in the East Coast where I grew up, ranging through working for the National Park Service's Night Skies Division. And I feel so grateful to now be here at the university talking to young people and hopefully inspiring some folks to think about the night in more detail. So I am going to frame this topic of artificial light at night and human health in kind of three main ways. The first way that I'll talk a little bit about is this idea that there are physiological responses to light in the human body. And the picture there, I actually got some years ago from the American Medical Association's website, and it's something that maybe many of us are familiar with, just light coming into your bedroom window from outside. I'm also going to frame this a little bit in terms of ecological and cultural resilience. We as humans are embedded in systems of our environment and our cultural systems. And so I also think about health and well-being from that angle. And the last, which I believe Eunice will talk about in more detail, is this idea of safety. And this image actually shows the dorms here at the University of Utah. It's actually an image that was published in a Salt Lake Tribune story about lighting here on my college campus. And to me, it sort of represents this idea that there are lots of actually nuances around thinking about safety and what that means. And the college campus is sort of something that I end up thinking about, where ideas of safety and perception and execution of different lighting, there's kind of a lot to talk about there. But certainly it's on the minds of students and faculty and folks as we're thinking about keeping people safe at night. Okay, so first I'll turn to the physiological responses to light in the human body. So we often think of light, or at least I know I do, as being just this sort of abstract, somewhat non-interactive thing that just happens. um, but in fact, light is part of the electromagnetic spectrum, and it's light itself, like what we think of as light, is simply the visible range of radiation in that spectrum. Um, so it has the ability to interact materially with our bodies and other physical elements of our environment, which is a little bit more obvious when we think of it in terms of maybe X-rays or heat or other aspects of the electromagnetic spectrum. And so I wanted to just start there because the eye is that material thing that interacts when it comes to a lot of physiological responses to light in the human body. A couple of diagrams here that are meant to illustrate when light enters the human eye, it interacts with different types of photoreceptors. So the left there is showing just sort of the general pathway of light entering the eye and hitting these photoreceptors, which are located sort of in the back of the structure of our eye. And most people have probably heard of these two types of photoreceptors called cones and rods, and they relate to two kinds of vision that we have as those cells interact with light. First is the scotopic vision, which is where the rods come into play. And this is sort of the black and white or night vision, not very high color rendering. This is photoreceptors that are mostly in the periphery of your vision, which is actually why looking slightly to the side of something helps you see better in low light. If anybody here has tried to see maybe a very dim galaxy or dark sky object in a dark place, you might notice that it's easier to see if you don't look directly at it, but slightly off to the side. That's because of the arrangement of these photoreceptors in the eye. So this is your night vision, essentially. It's lower resolution in terms of detail, so you can't pick up quite as much detail in dark conditions, of course, and it also affects color perception. We have lower color perception when these scotopic photoreceptors or the rods are the ones that are most active. The other one that we're probably all mostly using right now are the photopic photoreceptors or the cones. These are the ones that are most dominant in daytime. They're the ones that are responsible for detailed color rendering. And they're located more towards the center of your view. So you probably notice if you're just kind of thinking about it right now, things get a little bit more blurry off to the side of your vision, but you're probably looking at the screen right now, focusing your cones right here on the screen to get the best detail rendering. Um, that includes both detail and color. And the thing to note is that the cones themselves are not very sensitive to light, and so they don't actually activate very well in low light conditions. that's where the other ones take over. Another interesting thing to note here, thinking about these two different photoreceptors, is that there is this protein that powers the rod cells, the ones that are more sensitive to low light conditions. It's called rhodopsin. And it's somewhat degraded in the exposure to light when they're exposed to light, but it rebuilds in lower light conditions. So that takes a little while. It's not immediate. And it's part of why it takes a while to adjust to low light conditions. Uh, and it's also part of why if you're in a dark situation and somebody maybe flashes the flash of a camera or shines a flashlight in your eye, or you're just suddenly exposed to really bright light, you actually feel a sensation, somewhat of an unpleasant sensation in my books. And that is actually part of what's happening, is these proteins degrading with the exposure of light. And then, as we've likely all experienced, it takes a while for that to rebuild and regain your night vision. Of course, the adjustment of the aperture of your pupil is another thing that happens as we're adjusting from low light to more light conditions. So I talked a little bit about the left-hand image here, but I wanted to also talk a bit about the right-hand graph, which indicates how sensitive the two different photoreceptors are to different conditions of light. The y-axis, or the vertical axis there, refers to luminous efficacy, which is measured in lumens. It's like an amount of light per watt. And that's basically an indicator of the intensity of light being emitted as a source, as perceived by the human eye. And then the x-axis refers to the wavelength, or the color of the light. And so I'm pointing this out because intensity and color are kind of the two most important variables to consider when we're thinking about the interaction of the human eye, and actually maybe any kind of eyeball, with different types of lighting conditions. So light is coming into the human eye, and because we are all adapted to a natural rhythm of light in the day and darker at night, there are many physiological responses to light and important systems that are engaged throughout the day, that is often referred to in this broad umbrella term of the circadian rhythm. I'm just going to highlight melatonin, and I believe Eunice is going to talk a little bit more about this as well, as a key hormone that we produce in our body, and whose production is especially engaged when conditions are dark. So we need darkness at night, and regularly at the same time of night, to basically have healthy melatonin production. And I was just kind of browsing the sort of updated list of studies relating melatonin to all types of different factors of human health. And this is not an exhaustive list here, but essentially varied light exposure across the day and night, which regulates melatonin production, is implicated in healthy sleep, which of course relates to all kinds of elements of health, the ability to focus, the ability to have good digestion, various elements of our immune system function, including cancer suppression and mental health. All of these things kind of all interrelate with each other too. It's a really complex system of things going on inside the human body. But melatonin production especially is a really big deal when it comes to thinking about this direct physiological response that humans have to light. So now I'm going to speak a bit about this next dimension of health, ecological and cultural resilience. So we are, of course, in environments with many other living things. I like to call them our non-human neighbors. And all of like us and other of these non-human neighbors are all sensitive to light at different levels of intensity and different colors. This figure here is just kind of giving you a sense of the relative range of sensitivity and response when it comes to melatonin production in different sort of categories of creature. So you can see that things like fish, according to this figure, are actually really, really sensitive to light, and some of their physiological and behavioral processes are affected at pretty low light levels. Um, there's a lot of taxa of living things that we don't have a lot of information about just yet. But we do know a lot about birds who are also quite sensitive to light at low levels. You can see some other categories of living things there. And this figure talks about humans being sensitive in terms of this melatonin production at a level of about 6 lux. That's a measurement of light. And just as a comparison, that is actually a lower level than most street lighting provides. I saw something that said the average street lighting produces about 10 lux of light. So we're commonly exposed in outdoor environments at night to levels that interact with our own melatonin production, and that's even more so the case for many other living things around us. And I'll just use insects as a case study. This is a topic that, we could have whole additional meetings about. But everybody has probably encountered the fact that insects are attracted to light, and insects as sort of the basis of the surrounding ecology in many ways, are a really good sort of symbol of how light really changes ecological systems. The picture on the right there is showing a bat, which is foraging for insects near a light. The picture on the left is showing just some flood lighting in like a stadium where tons and tons of insects are being attracted. And the full extent of impact on our non-human neighbors is really just now starting to be understood. Um, but it marks a really big, significant change that is happening kind of to the health of our ecosystems all around us. This quote here is from the Entomological Society of America, people that love bugs. Maybe not everybody loves bugs, but they do have a lot of really important roles that then sort of indirectly interface with our health and well-being. They have a quote from a website that I'll share as part of these slides. The benefits of healthy ecosystems, such as clean air, clean water, pollination of crops and native plants, and robust food webs, all depend on a diverse and thriving community of insects and arthropods, the little things that run the world. And this is one kind of group of non-human neighbors that themselves are decreasing in biodiversity and in just absolute number as we've been measuring over the last couple of decades. Now, their exposure to light at night is only one of many things that us and the non-human neighbors that we have are challenged by. But I'm raising this issue here. It's just to kind of say that we can do something about this one if we address lighting practices. I forgot to mention the snowy plover there, the little chick that is eating an insect, but this is just a really sensitive to light migratory bird that's important here in northern Utah. They nest around the Great Salt Lake. And to me, they symbolize part of what's going on with this ecological health. And they're, of course, part of the food web that is really important here in my region. All right, the last lens on safety that I'll introduce us to is, to human health and well-being at night is this idea of safety. And safety is actually a really complicated topic. A lot of the time when we're talking about light at night, we think specifically about crime and crime prevention, but that's really only one piece of this kind of broader spectrum of what people are talking about when they're talking about safety. Navigation is a really big part of safety. Crime and how light interacts with crime is a piece of it. Perception and perceptions of safety are another element. And this perception of safety relates really strongly with ideas of mental health, how anxious or kind of safe people feel, and how there are a lot of equity issues related with that. Different people feel safe in different types of environments. And then, of course, the long-term sort of safety related to the themes that I talked about in the previous slides. So when it comes to safety, we know that we need some artificial light at night in our built environments, but there are a lot of unhelpful lights out there that don't align with the elements of human health and well-being. Glare, I'd like to identify specifically as a form of light pollution that is a really great example of this. The two pictures there on the left show an example of glare sort of acting on the top where, you know, the eye, or in this case, the aperture of a camera is adjusted to that really bright light point source, kind of casting dark shadows and making things actually harder to see on the average across that scene. And simply by shielding that with a hand or with anything else, you can see much better in the darker parts of that setting. And in this case, the two pictures are meant to show that you can actually see, once you've shielded the glare, that there's a person standing in the shadow next to that garage. Many light fixtures produce glare just by being unshielded and create extreme glare by being intense and of a color temperature that our eyes and the eyes of many of our non-human neighbors are particularly sensitive to. And all of these elements and more can be adjusted to both provide artificial light at night and balance the need for light with human health and well-being. So this is just to say that none of this says that we need to end lighting at night altogether, but just that there are many reasons for our health that we could do it smarter. And there are tons of information out there about how to do that. Thank you.
Kate, thank you so much for that excellent overview of how humans and our living environment interact with light. That was definitely a lot of detail, and I'm hoping you can share your slides later because there was so much detail, and kind of high level. So I really appreciate that introduction. And as we transition to Eunice, our next speaker, I'd like to introduce Eunice Knoll Wagner. Here she is. Thank you so much for joining us today. Eunice is the founder and president of the Center of Design for an Aging Society. She also serves on the Illuminating Engineering Society's Committee for Lighting for Seniors and the Visually Impaired. A question that continues to come up with these sections is how light can be managed for light-sensitive people. So I reached out to Eunice. She's going to help us understand how the human eye responds to light, both at night and during the day, a slightly deeper view, and a focus on the aging eye and how. So I'm thrilled to have Eunice join us today, and I'm going to open up her slides. I will be sharing my screen for her. Thank you.
Okay.
So welcome.
Well, thank you, Liz, for inviting me, and it's a great pleasure for me to be here, speaking to a different audience than I normally present to. Most of the time I'm talking to people who are aging themselves or in building facilities that are going to take care of older people and try to get them to be aware of what it's like. But if this is your first time to understand that your vision is going to change from what it was when you were younger, this is a rude awakening, I'm sure. So I'll try to be as specific as I can and try to get through the slides. So next slide. So to be current with our topic of dark skies, I grew up in Bend, Oregon. That still remains to be one of the areas that the dark sky is very dominant. However, when I was there growing up, it was a small town, about 13,000 people. So we didn't have light pollution. You could just go out in your backyard and look up and you'd see this beautiful sky all the time. And it was a beautiful night sky that I was accustomed to, as well as the bright days that I, doing kid type things, running around and enjoying it. But we just took for granted that we had that beautiful sky every night. not realizing that many people don't. So next slide. So I'm going to focus on the morning light. And in this picture of the South Sister, just out of Bend, you can see how blue the sky is there. So that's where you talk about mainly dark sky, I talk about darkness at night and bright during the day. So it's a contrast, but yet I'm still endorsing the dark sky. So, but when I'm thinking about people's human health, I look at the color of the sky. So next slide. So this is sunset with a view toward the Golden Gate Bridge. You can barely see the two pillars there, but so you can see how when the sun is low, it has more of a pinky orange color. And that is what I'm trying to express, that it needs to be darkness where you sleep. So next slide, please. So this is just a diagram of the both visual and non-visual effects of light. So next slide. So the yellow charts the path of light coming in through our eyes, going back through the LGN that is really a transport system to the visual cortex that's in the thalamus. So that is how and I'm going to be talking about how the light that enters our eye changes and how much difference it is from being a young person to being an older 80-year-old person. Next slide. So this is the chart of what Kate was talking about, the non-visual pathways where the intrinsic photosensitive retinal ganglion cell are the photoreceptors that are so sensitive and controls our melatonin production. So that's why we need bright days, dark nights. Next slide. So I want to just have this graph on here so that you understand how much, if you were 20 years of age now or 30 or even 40, the amount of light reaching your retina is going to change by a huge amount. And so knowing how to light and provide better vision is what I want to talk with you about. This change happens like all the way in that visual pathway that I was just describing. There was changes. The pupil is smaller, almost rigid, hardly does any open and close when you get to be that age. So that's just one of the items. The lens of the eye, the light comes in through the pupil and goes up through the lens. The lens thickens and turns kind of a amberish color. So, and then it has to go, whatever remains of the light then goes back to the optic nerve. So there's light absorption all along that pathway that it travels. Then on top of that, you have age-related eye diseases, which would be things like macular degeneration, where you lose your central vision, glaucoma, where you lose your sight vision, where it's more like tunnel vision that you have, cataracts, which can be removed, and diabetic retinopathy, which gives you spotted kind of breakage, where macular degeneration tends to be just in the focus area. So next slide. So this change in the light impacts our circadian rhythm. And you can see in this diagram for sleep that it's much more sensitive as we age and we have less good light or good sleep at night. So we have to really protect the person who's sleeping as well as giving them the bright light during the day. So we need that bright blue light, as I was showing in next to the first slide. The cataract, as I mentioned, is kind of an amberish color. And guess what? It cancels the blue range, which is the light we need first thing in the morning. So how much of the real true light gets in? There's been plenty of research studies that show sleep improves once you have cataract surgery. So if somebody is eligible for it and they aren't doing it, encourage them to get on with it, because it'll make a huge impact in their life. And as we age, our sleep kind of comes a little bit earlier. I was a lark or early morning person. There's people that function better in the evening, or my son, for instance, I'm up early. He's best time is right 9 to 11 o'clock. That's when he's most creative. And we'd be talking together, and I'd be talking about today, and he'd be talking about tomorrow, and we're talking about the same day. So it's just kind of crazy when you're understanding that people have these changes. But so not everyone is, you are going to have some maybe more night owls that would be visiting these outdoor areas at night and would need to have some of the help that I'm going to suggest today. So, and we all know about avoiding the electronic devices, cell phones and TVs, so that we don't get that blue light just before we're trying to go to bed. Next slide. So I took these images up in the San Juan Islands, and of course I had no light pollution there. So you could see I got really clear blue mornings and really warm afternoons as sunset is coming on. Next slide. So the things that we can do is to, as we say, have bright days, dark nights, but then you have to have window covering that blocks light trespass. Need to dim lights prior to going to bed, because your body starts needing to shut down. You don't want it totally bright. Always sleep in the dark. Research project that Naomi Miller and I were on in Sacramento, they had installed an LED tunable lighting system in a nursing home, and we wanted to know how effective that was. And basically the light wasn't bright enough to stimulate bright days. However, what was good was we could dim the lights down and change the color, so that you went from that 6,500 Kelvin blue light to a warm buttery orange color at about 26,000 K. So, or 2,600, I misspoke. So we could improve sleep 20% just by dimming the lights. It just sounds so simple, but it's hard to get the message through. I also wanted to point out how different light levels are in these environments, where daylight at noon is like 100,000. Cloudy days, it's diminishing. Overcast days, diminishing more. That light box or therapy thing, that's at 2,500. Nursing homes, however, are at 50. And these are measured in lux, not foot candles. So if you're accustomed to talking about foot candles, it would be 5-foot candles rather than 50. So, and 50 is lux, 5 is foot candles. And then sunset is actually a little bit brighter than what you have in your normal care facility. So it might come across in how I'm talking is that I think nursing homes need to be improved in so many ways. One, just getting people outdoors would be a major step. Next slide. Kate mentioned glare. The increased sensitivity to glare as we age is documented in the graph, and it also impacts our adaptation, because as Kate mentioned, our eyes change and adapt much more slowly, but it's slower from bright to dim. So if you were in a bright lighted area and you're trying to go out to the outdoors, that's where your eyes will really struggle to make the adjustment based on the light levels that you're in. And when it's easier to go from dim to bright than bright to dim. There's an issue about contrast sensitivity that we'll go into. Next slide. Okay, this is where I want to talk about what you can do. Instead of using a bunch of light and shining it all around, the way to light is indirect lighting. Like the slide on the left shows the exposed bulbs of that bright light in that cave. But the other one is the light is aimed toward the walls, so it is indirect. The light is not lighting the walls, and they're beautiful to know, but then it also bounces into the space and keeps you from having to adjust to that brightness. Contrast is the other tool that you have at your disposal, because older eyes lose contrast sensitivity, but you can build that in. You can see that really white rail that is probably has some lighting in it where people can see where the edge is. Next slide. So the contrast multiplier by age, this is saying that if you're that old, you need more contrast by that form. And I thought the best example that I could find outdoors were the steps in Vienna. You know, there's a lot of canals, and so you're going up and crossing over and going back down again. And so the way these stairs were built years ago, the white brick or stone that was at the front makes it clear to differentiate between the riser, which is the white part, and the tread, which is the flat part. So you have good vision whether you're going up or down that stairway. And how many years has this been in place? Long, long time. Thank you. Next slide. Another way to light is light below your sight line, or on these stairs. The light is put into the handrail, so it's not into your eyes, but it lights the treads. The tread has some contrast, but it really could use more. But I used that ladder from one of the websites that I found where both contrast and lighting would benefit people who are going up and down this stairway. Thank goodness there's handrails because people could hang on to them. But it's always good to have both contrast and light to light the space. The thing that you're trying to avoid. Next slide. This is a difficult area. I'm trying to show a cave that's really has a lot of light in it, but yet you can see it's dark all around the surrounding areas. And our eyes, as I mentioned before, adapt much more slowly to changes in light level. So we need to gradually adjust the intensity of the light as people pass through. And it's really hard with this like open cave. You don't really have any transition other than you could put that brighter light further back into the cave and have softer, dimmer lights as people would gradually go in and then also gradually come out. I mentioned the personal headlamps. You don't want those in a tight facility like that because you don't want to get the light in other people's eyes. So if you are on your own trying to make your way from this site to your car, you could use a headlamp to light your passageway without negatively impacting other people. Next slide. So if you're looking for a resource, the committee that I share, that I stand on, that has developed this way of lighting and the visual environment for older adults and the visually impaired. It's an ANSI standard, it's an IES document. We are in the final ANSI review period for the RP 2825. So it should be ready in a month or two to be available for people to use. But most of the things that I've talked about here could be answered or directed through this document. Next slide. Thank you for your attention. I've got my email address out there. Please contact me if you would like, and I'd appreciate hearing from you. Thanks so much. Bye now.
Eunice, thank you so much. That was so informative to me, especially about the importance of the blue light that we receive during the day, and how it starts the circadian rhythm and moving into our nighttime. We often talk about blue light being bad at night, but it's so important during the day. So I really appreciate your talk, and we will get to more questions. There were a few that popped in during your talk, Eunice, and we are now going to transition to Troy. I'm very happy to have Troy Allen, who has been working on a really great study with his team out of Cooperative, Utah. Troy Allen is a Utah State University Extension Professional Practice Assistant Professor in the Department of Home and Community Health. Troy and his team have been conducting field studies on the mental health benefits of dark skies in rural areas. He has an incredible story, including time in which he served as a clinical chaplain for the U.S. Army, and a host of other experiences that have contributed to his deep appreciation and passion for starry skies and their healing effects. Troy, welcome. Please share your screen when you're ready.
Okay, great. Thank you, Lisa. Thanks for that introduction. Let me pull up this slide here. Well, first of all, thanks to Kate and Eunice for their fantastic work. I've been taking notes because I have a lot of interesting things cooking in my mind about the next projects and some of the things that I want to tackle. And Kate and Eunice, you spoke on some very important things that I want to look at down the road. But I'm honored to be here and to share the story of how dark skies and awe are helping our communities reconnect with our wonder, with our meaning, and our wellness. And I've seen a lot of names on the Zoom meeting that I know. I've been in meetings with a lot of you. I've presented to you, some of you, and some of you have even been part of my studies. And so it's just fantastic to have this. You know, one of the things I want to start with today is this idea that's presented by David Abram. And he says that perception is a kind of improvised dance with the world. It's a two-way participation. And so I've labeled my presentation today, "The Sky is Not a Screen." And what that means is that we're not simply going out and looking at the night sky, but we are engaging with the night sky. And we'll talk more about that as we go. So this is a little bit about our project, about the things that we're doing for mental health and dark skies. And we'll just kind of go with that. So let's begin this presentation. So the problem, right? The problem is we live in a world of disconnection, of isolation, and of course, the vanishing night. We're living in a time, I believe, of profound disconnection, and especially among our youth and our teens. Teens and young adults are navigating loneliness, anxiety, and identity fragmentation, often while immersed in a highly curated digital world. Light pollution has erased the stars for many, severing one of the deepest sensory and spiritual links to the world that we have. I think of Kate's and Eunice's talks about how light and light pollution and all of this impacts us as a human. And it really, really impacts who we are in our mental health. The night sky, I believe, it was once a source of shared myth and grounding, and in many places has become invisible. So that's the problem. And when I became a faculty member for Utah State University, one of the things they asked me was, what is a problem you want to solve? What is a problem you want to look at? And oh, by the way, you don't have much money to do it. So I said, okay, that's not a problem because I live in a place where we have beautiful natural landscape, beautiful night skies. And I'm going to use that to help us get back on track. And they're like, okay, well, good luck. And so my whole body of work is starting to focus on this idea and this problem that we're having. So what does it mean, a return to sensory reciprocity? That is, how is it that David Abram speaks of a world that speaks back, a world not inert, but alive and responsive, a full story? Our dark sky work is grounded in this idea. When we ask people to engage with the night, we are not just stargazing. We are participating in a kind of ancient dialogue, and that dialogue changes often through the emotion of awe. And so this is kind of the theory that I've developed and kind of the framework, and as you will see, that we're not just stargazing, but we're participating in a world of beauty and of awe. So why awe? Well, awe is a fascinating topic to me, and it's an emotion that has created and changed my life. And I want to talk to you just a bit about awe and about how interacting with the night sky works. So awe is defined as really the feeling of being in the presence of something vast that transcends our current understanding of the world. It triggers 5 profound effects that contribute directly to our mental wellness. First, it reduces stress and inflammation. Second, shifts focus away from the self, enhances pro-social behavior, increases connection and meaning, and it boosts vitality and joy. Dr. Dacher Keltner, his book Awe, and some of the studies that he's done, for instance, Operation Arctic Cure, really empowered me and highlighted an experience I had in Afghanistan. When I was deployed to Afghanistan, and I was dropped in the middle of nowhere and was asked or assigned to help people with their mental health in these places. My own mental health was really fragile at that time. I was very concerned about myself. I was concerned about my family at home. I was increasingly losing connection to people that I loved. I didn't have much joy. And one night, my assistant decided to take me to the top of a hill, if you will, outside of a forward operating base and show me the night sky. I don't know if he knew the power of it or he just thought it was beautiful. But when I climbed up on that hill and felt the emotion of awe, it basically changed the way that I was feeling about my life. It reduced my stress. I shifted the focus away from myself and towards others. It enhanced my pro-social behavior. I was wanting to be with the soldiers. I wanted to be with those that I was there to serve. It increased my connection and the meaning of my life, and it boosted the vitality and joy. And I was thought that I was onto something amazing and new, but come to find out, Dr. Keltner had been studying this for some time. The emotion of awe and the night sky is a powerful, powerful cure for our mental well-being. And if you're interested, you can go and watch Operation Arctic Cure. They don't look at night sky, but they look at mountains and the awe that is present there with Dr. Keltner. Dr. Keltner has been a great inspiration to me. He's now a colleague of mine from UC Berkeley, and I've been working closely with him as I put this research together. So here is the framework that I developed as part of our study. It is encircled about by eco-phenomenology. The framework that encircles it is the experiencing the world through the body and the earth, and experiencing the night sky. So that is encircling our framework for this study. The framework holds our research and programming at the intersection of awe, there in the upper left-hand quadrant, the emotion that invites humility, curiosity, and meaning, such as it did for me. Dark skies, the physical environment that evokes scale, silence, and perspective. Mental health, because we do have the problem with disconnection, the human concern that drives our need for reconnection, and then the sensory reciprocity that Abrams believes in, that we're not passive observers, but participants in this living world. And at the center of it all is the lived experience, what is felt, what is remembered and carried forward by each individual who steps into the dark and looks up and reconnects with something bigger than themselves. So this is the framework that I developed as part of our study, our very first study with dark skies and mental health. And in fact, it's one of just a handful of studies across the world and across the past century, really, that is interested in dark sky and mental health. So there wasn't much to go on, so we've had to build this from the ground up. So our study started last December, and if you've ever seen the dark skies and the night skies in central Utah in December and January and February, if you can stand the cold, you have some just brilliant experiences with dark skies. So we thought that our study on mental health and our forthcoming teen curriculum are built on the immersive dark sky experiences. We brought participants to certified dark sky locations in Goblin Valley State Park, Capitol Reef National Park, Bryce Canyon National Park, and Fremont Indian State Park was scheduled. And again, we engaged people in guided stargazing, reflective writing, storytelling, silence, and relational connection. We used a phenomenological approach to gather these insights, allowing the participants to articulate their internal transformations. So what did we find? Awe in action. Here are our findings. Awe in action this is the visual summary of the things that we found. Awe in the center and these orbiting terms. It lowered the stress of our participants. The nervous system reset. Ego was down. It softened the self-focus. Connection was up. Relational openness to others. Meaning was up. Existential anchoring and joy was up. Mood and vitality. As we began analyzing reflections from our dark sky gatherings, a pattern emerged. Awe was not simply about what was seen, but what was shifted. These emotional shifts were often quiet but profound, sparking clarity, perspective. Our thematic analysis does not isolate these outcomes, but treats them as a constellation that is a distinct but deeply interconnected. So all of these things that you're seeing here that we found are deeply connected to awe and our experience with the dark sky. We present 5 primary themes that arose most strongly from participants' reflections, and each represents a dimension of the awe experience. So now what we're doing is we are in the process of writing up this experience and publishing our findings. But I want to highlight some of the things that because it's a phenomenological study, we captured through journal writing, through interviews, through field notes, some of the things that were being said. So let's look at the emotional shifts and the inner peace that were found. I love some of these quotes. We'll start with, I started the week with more calmness. This is after one night of stargazing. I started the week with more calmness. I feel more inner peace and I have more patience with myself and with others. And I was thinking when I read that quote from this participant, I was like, my gosh, we all need to do that before we get up and drive on the freeways, right? We need to have patience with ourselves and with others. I just love that. So there's this shift. One participant described it as a living embodiment of a mantra, and the chaos within me found balance. I thought that was such a beautiful way to say that. Others said things like, toward the end of the evening, I found that my problems seemed much smaller, and I felt awe, just peace. I know everything's going to be okay. So we can see the emotional shifts and the inner peace from our experiencing with our dark sky experience. Here are feeling small and belonging. So another thing that awe and our dark sky experience created. Being in nature makes me feel there's so much more to the world than me and my problems. I also experienced that. So my lived experience was similar to this participant's experience. One said, just laying here how rare of an experience it is to have this time to take it all in. When we were at Goblin Valley, a brave group of people and one of my colleagues took maybe 5 or 10 people deep into the guts, I guess you could say, of Goblin Valley, where it is super, super dark. And they just laid there for like, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes, and they just soaked it all in. And that was one of the participants. And it was a rare experience for sure. Another said sitting in the rocks was very connecting, grounding to be part of that. I came to the experience consumed by life's problems. By the end, I was happy to engage with other people. All people are connected, even when things appear separate. So these are the feeling small and the belonging that we get from our awe experience and dark skies. So here is, this is really, the sky is not just beautiful, it's healing. And that's kind of the theme of this meeting today, right? The sky, the darkness, it's not just beautiful, but it's healing. It's a connection between the universe, the nature, and ourselves. And this is my favorite, absolutely favorite thing, and you're going to see this in our publication, is it felt like a reset. And that is kind of where we wanted to go. Awe is not just a flash of wonder. When we took our participants out to see the night sky, it was not a flash of wonder. It is a force that can recalibrate the human spirit. Our findings suggest that night sky experiences may serve as a powerful intervention in an overstimulated, fragmented world. Participants didn't just walk away inspired, they walked away changed. And I absolutely love that concept of that it felt like a reset. I think in protecting our night skies and protecting the darkness, in valuing what we have, we really are trying to reset our lives, because they are busy, they are chaotic, and they are full of problems. But as we move forward, we're going to continue to develop this. We're going to continue to develop curriculum and toolkits, community partnerships, and because in the sky they found healing, and in the healing they found belonging. And that's such an important theme in our study. So where do we go from here? What is the way forward for us? Awe is the feeling that we are part of something larger, and we want that to continue to grow. Larger than ourselves, something vast and mysterious that transcends our understanding. And Dr. Keltner said that. Look at the things that we have coming up. And this is what's exciting. We're publishing our findings of our very first study, and that will come out sometime, hopefully in December. We're almost done with our paper. If we look here, we are right in the middle of developing a curriculum for teens, and we're building a structured curriculum, Skyward it's called, that integrates night sky viewing, storytelling, silence, emotional resilience, and recalibration. Remember how it was a reset? That's what we're interested in, is this recalibration. So our upcoming teen program, see, once word gets out, it really starts to spread. So we're running some pilot programs right now. In 2 weeks, I'll be out at the Great Basin National Park with a group of teens from Salt Lake City. On the 1st of July, I'll be at Bryce Canyon with a group of teens from the Logan area, I believe. And then in July, we're teaming with our friends in Colorado to run 2 teen retreats, girl retreat, boy retreat at the Grand Mesa Island Lake in Colorado. So our idea is to take this curriculum that we're building, and then we'll be able to publish it, and people will be able to get certifications in it to purchase the curriculum and to use this in their communities. So that's how this is going to spread like a wildfire, right? It just starts little, and then we're going to spread it. So very important for our teen population. For veterans, night sky experiences offer a path to rediscover identity and meaning beyond war, a place to be rooted again, and programming for veterans is in the works. Currently, I work with veterans and equine therapies, but I'm starting to transition more of the body of work into this dark sky for veterans. And so there'll be more to follow on that. And Dr. Keltner and I are working on some pretty exciting things with that. And then something very unique, and I was so glad that Eunice, when you said this, I was like, oh my gosh. So Eunice said, we've got to do a better job at care centers and rest homes and things like that to get people outdoors. She said it would change everything. Well, look at this. It says, for the elderly, for the aging, we are exploring how awe reconnects them to memory and legacy and the feeling that they are still part of something unfolding and beautiful. We're also discussing the early stages of a possible curriculum and grant funding. We did find a grant. I am applying for it. And so we're really going to start focusing on the aging population as well. So this is not just a program. I want you to know that. This is a philosophy. It is a return to stillness, to mystery, and of course to each other. And it is a return to the wild. I think as we end this, I want you to think about one thing. Let's protect the night sky because it may be one of the most powerful resources for healing and remembering and reconnecting that we've ever had. We cannot lose it. We have to protect it. Thank you for your time today. And I really appreciate the comments and your questions. And we will turn it back over to Lisa.
All right, thank you. I'm just so delighted by the connections you've made with these people and your ability to reproduce those moments, those experiences in your work and your studies. I think it's going to really be impactful as you continue on and share how the dark skies provide experiences of awe, and particularly recognizing that we have this whole world and the whole universe, that how we can actually be more participatory and recognize the sky above us and getting away from our screens. I'm going to invite everybody to turn their video on so that we can see everyone and we can move into questions. I know John has been collecting some of your questions from the chat, and I'd like to ask a question for the whole group. There we go. Okay, everyone. One thing that regarding a lot of our guests today are also in the business of dark sky interpretation. And I think the common thread is how people interact with the light. And one way that we do that is with our evening activities. And with Troy's examples of bringing people into the dark, we want to make sure that people feel safe and comfortable. I'd love to have the audience share, if you'd like, your perspective on how to create what you might do in your spaces. What have you done to ensure that people are safe in a night interpretation event? I thought we just want to bring that in really quickly. And while we're waiting for people to consider that, John, would you be willing to address some of the questions that have come in?
Yeah, sure. We've got one. Bradley asked a question for Eunice. In fact, Bradley, do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Eunice, I have a comment that kind of caught my attention at one of the Dark Sky International conferences was that the problems with LED lights and the blue light spectrum and how it bounces around inside of your eye and it creates havoc, something to that effect. And I looked into it a little bit, and it does seem to be an issue of chromatic aberration where the blue light doesn't focuses just short of your retina, and it does definitely has implications. And yeah, you mentioned the aging eye and cataracts. I'm certainly there, and I'm noticing more and more that LED lights really, they just cause me a lot of problems in just architectural spaces and people using headlights at star parties and so forth. Is there any more that you want to add? Can you add anything to? Basically, I'm interested as an architect. I'm interested in the problems with just specifying LED lights and. Because they're cheap, they're bright, and putting in more of them, and just the problems that creates, because I certainly am noticing it.
Well, thank you for your question. I would say that when I talk about doing indirect light, then you would not have that brightness. It would be bouncing off of the walls and ceiling and such, so that it would be smoothing out any spikes like that. Naomi Miller's done a lot of work relative to flicker, and her work is through the IES as well. So that all of these things need to be taken into consideration. But if you follow the path of doing indirect lighting rather than direct, it would be better. To me, the beauty of LEDs that they're small, that's no longer that great big fluorescent tube that you have to work with. So you can tuck them in places that are easier to manage and have an overall type lighting system.
You know, I just want to make a comment on them being small. And so my background is specifically in hotel design. And when I first started seeing LED lights showing up in hotel rooms, they were small pinpoint sources, and it was causing sharp shadows, it really wasn't good. They really needed diffusers, and the lamping has gotten better as far as getting away from that single point of light and diffusing. But yeah, that's I think
Yeah, it's just terrible glare from it. I
yes,
mean, I couldn't
yeah.
agree more.
Yeah.
But thank you for your question.
Well, thank you for your presentation.
You're welcome.
I have a question. I wanted to address with Kate, who our first speaker, the background information you provided and your work with communities and expressing how the difference between light pollution and the qualities of light and the light source. How do you approach the fact that these are two different things? When you engage with communities, do you specify these different elements of lighting? There's the effect, the long, broad or exposure, light pollution, and then the specifics of how we can work on the ground. How has your experience been working with communities?
Yeah, it's been quite complicated actually. I mean, speaking of LEDs, one thing that I have noticed is, and I'm guessing there are other folks here in the Zoom room that have shared this experience, is that communities that are retrofitting lighting, whether that's municipal lighting or here in Salt Lake City, there's a lighting master plan, and new lights are being installed that are intended to sort of satisfy some of the things and values that we are talking about here today and throughout this series. But they don't always address all of those different dimensions. And so I think that we've worked a lot on the education component of just making more people aware of light pollution as a broad concept. And a lot of people are taking action from an individual scale to larger scales. But there are still a lot of challenges with the execution component of it. Where, even if there are, let's say, community members in a town that is retrofitting municipal lighting that have the knowledge about the relationship between intensity of lighting, color temperature, and the various technologies like LED that might present themselves as options, that we are still ending up with lighting lit settings that don't seem very ideal. And so, I've talked to many community members about this, and some folks maybe conflate energy efficiency, which LEDs are all about, with some of the other dimensions that we're talking about. They're not like differentiating that LEDs are well and good, but there are also some nuances on how to apply them in a way that was just discussed. And also that, yeah, there might be other things to consider. So I think that, what we're doing right now is really the best thing, just having these conversations and getting this more sort of like nuanced complexity out into the world, so that folks can think about like what actually to pay attention to, all the way from the idea to the design to the execution of changing lighting.
Thanks, Kate. I appreciate that. And I think I'll point out that John, my co-host, is a wonderful leader for communities if they are inclined to have these discussions starting from the start. So I would encourage you to reach out to John Barentine for information on that as well. I have another question that I wanted to ask Eunice. If you have any specific points for our audience when designing lighting spaces for people with aging or light sensitive eyes, what would you recommend for our audience here, like take home points, the most important points for our audience today?
Well, I would say shield the source. You know, bounce it off the wall, bounce it off the ceiling, wherever that is because that's the area that you're closest to, but yet you don't have to have the brightness in your eyes, because that's whether you're light sensitive or as the older people have more glare sensitivity, you're avoiding that. In fact, one of the research studies on circadian rhythm that I like to point out was done by Us van Someren in the Netherlands. And he found that if he did indirect lighting in his research experiment, he didn't have to hire people to guard the subjects so that they would look away, because before it was so bright, people would look away. And so that's why it kind of came to be that we say it needs to be provided in the environment. So that's the main thing of how to avoid that sensitivity.
Thank you for adding that. The question I asked earlier, I might direct it directly to Troy. In your exercises with your guests in the state parks and national parks, these dark sky places, you're doing your field studies. Did you speak with your guests about the process of the time that takes for their eyes to adjust? Is that something that you bring into your conversations at all? I'm just curious if that's part of your educational component.
Yeah, so we do spend a little bit of time talking about like how our eyes adjust. We try to use red lights, headlamps, things of that nature to kind of protect our night vision, if you will. And so we do spend a little bit of time on that. And we also talk in one of the modules I'm writing now for the teens, we do talk about light pollution awareness and some of those things that we can do to help around our homes and maybe even schools or things like that. So yeah, that is part of our educational process.
Oh, excellent. I think that's important. I'm not seeing a lot of questions coming in. John, unless, correct me if I'm wrong.
There's a couple from earlier on, and I wanted to make sure we put this one to Troy as well. This is from Patrick Summer. He wondered if you still interact with military circles. He says, I'm still serving in the Air National Guard, and I'm interested to know if you discuss these issues as they relate to service members' mental health.
Yeah, great question. I was just writing Patrick's name down here so that I can follow up with him. But let's see, when was it? In November, or no, December. I actually presented this at the 19th Special Forces Retreat up in Salt Lake area at the Adobe building there at the point of the mountain. So yes, I'm still very much involved with military circles. And although trying to figure out how that works more as a retiree and as now a professor. So I would love to contact you, Patrick, and see if we can get some more interested folks. But yeah, the 19 Special Forces, they're tracking it. So.
And Troy, there was another comment here from Dominic Bertu, who works with the Office of Astronomy for Development with the International Astronomical Union. And he wonders about whether you're open to collaboration. He says, we're running astronomy for mental health programs and research and would like to link up with you.
Yeah, so I was actually writing Dominic's name down too. I think that's fantastic. And I did come across a couple of articles that I believe it is from their office that talks about mental health and night skies and stargazing. So I would absolutely love to do a collaboration with you guys. So send me your email address or shoot me an email. I put my email address in the chat box. So that would be fantastic. I would love that. Thank you.
And I saw, Bradley, you put your hand up a minute ago, but then put it down. Did you have a question or did you get your question answered?
I just had a comment to what Kate made, and probably most everyone here is aware of it, but John actually wrote a really good article that I have passed on and referred to a few times last year. I see it was January 24 in Sky and Telescope, where he talked about the municipal specifications of LED lights and then the overuse of them because they're cheap and so forth. But Lisa echoed that as well and said that he's certainly a good resource on that. But I would, as a starting point of just some of the comments that Kate was making, I would see if you can seek out that article. Maybe John has a link to it. But thank you, John. That was a great article. I refer to it often.
I have one more question for you, Troy, before I wrap up with the next session and our codes for our APA members. Troy, have you had any participants who are not able to see? And if you do, how might you encourage those who are without sight to engage with the night and so they can have the same effects?
Yeah, great question, Lisa. And my team and I have thought about that, and I think it goes back to our framework, right? That the idea. Let me see if I can pull that framework up right now. So just the idea of the sensory reciprocity, that is us giving to nature and nature giving back to us. I really feel strongly that if we were to have somebody with impaired vision go on one of these nighttime excursions with us, I want to believe that nature would give them back exactly what somebody that can see is receiving. I want to believe that. We've never tried it, but it's something absolutely for sure fits in the framework, and it would really be a good test of that framework to see what would happen. So great question. I'm going to write that one down too. Thank you.
Troy and John, I think you're seeing it as well. I'd like to introduce one question here from Carolyn Oakson. For any of the panelists, actually, have there been any studies that investigated light-dark on infants and young children? So from any of your perspectives, does anyone have any comments on the investigations of light and dark environments on infants and young children?
I will talk about it briefly, but it's just personal experience. When I know that a couple is having a child, I would always give them a gift of night lights that were very amber in color, would be motion activated, so that when mom or dad went into the baby's room, if it was crying or whatever, they would only have a minimum of light so that they could see what they were doing, and it didn't wake them up so abruptly, so that then the parents could go back, get in bed and go back to sleep. And that's my only experience with young children, is just preserving the bright days and dark nights for them as well as adults.
Thanks, Eunice. Do you have different age groups that you're in your current study?
No, our current study was for adults, but that has been brought up. How about grade school kids and even younger, right? What would their experience be? So I don't know of any studies that have done it yet. So we definitely are interested in looking at that. I can see why this takes like 30 years to do, right?
Well, I know that there's many people that want to know more about your research and how they can get involved. I need to, looking at our time, I really appreciate those of you who have stayed on the call for all this time. This has been so interesting, and I hope that our audience appreciated this interconnection of the topics that we've covered today in health and our mental health and our overall well-being and the way we engage with the night sky. I do invite you all to join us again, staying tuned to the Colorado Plateau Dark Sky Cooperative's quarterly connection. I'm putting into the chat here that link. Just keep checking back. We do have another meeting in September. And the topic will be on professional support for dark sky communities, finding common ground, another comment that I often hear in these sessions. We'd like to encourage anyone on this call today to give us your feedback on how we are doing and on the subject matter. If there is something that you'd like to hear from us in a future session, please let us know. And if you are interested in being part of our emailing list so that you are getting the messages regarding this, please sign up with our newsletter. It's a wonderful resource for staying part of this community and knowing what kinds of activities are going on. And we really appreciate everybody being engaged and sharing your love of the night sky or your personal knowledge of the night sky with others. So I am very grateful for you to be here. Thank you to our speakers, Kate and Eunice and Troy, for being with us and sharing your knowledge and wisdom. John, thank you for being with us as well. I wanted to wish you all a great day, and I hope to see you back in September. You can check our website for the recording of this in the next couple of days. To everyone, thank you so much, and have a great day.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thanks, Lisa. Talk to you soon.